look, you've done everything, you've tried, all kind of actions, but here is a country which is still standing.
We managed to remove the immediate threat on our existence. We are going to exercise our right for self-defense, and we do not depend on the consent of Iran or any other country to do so. We are working together. We might have differences, different leaders have different styles when it comes to talk, and some of the things are reported in an exaggerated way.
Do you think a country like Pakistan has the credibility to be in a position of such importance?
The United States has to exercise special caution not to fall into traps.
You spoke about abuse. There are also allegations of abuse against the Israeli army.
First of all, any country and any army will do abuses. Once you have force in your hand, abuses will happen. The question is whether it's the exception or the rule.
Middle East has been in a state of profound uncertainty, with countries like Iran, US, Israel and even Lebanon involved in tensions. We also have a lot of global powers trying to be helping out in terms of what the future of this entire region would look like. To discuss all of that and more, I have with me Israel's ambassador to India, Mr. Reuven Azar. Mr. Azar, thank you very much for taking out time at this very critical moment.
My pleasure, Shuja. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd begin by asking you, we're again seeing tensions between Israel, US and Iran, Israel on the Lebanese front, but particularly between Iran and US, we saw there were tensions again. Does this hint at the next phase of the conflict? Should we worry that this could escalate into a broader regional war?
Well, I don't know. I think that we are concerned because what we have been seeing is an attempt by the Iranian regime and the Iranian axis to reverse the results of the military campaign and to try to turn the military defeat into a diplomatic victory for them. So they are trying to test the patience of the United States and to poke Israel. Okay. Now, look, it's very difficult for people that do not follow this on a day-to-day to understand what is the basic situation here. The challenge that we have in the last decade and a half is that the entire West Asia region is undergoing huge instability as a result of the collapse of some of the regimes and the appetite of different forces, especially the Iranian regime, to sneak into the vacuum and to expand their influence in our region in order to expand the radical agenda. Now, in the case of Israel, unfortunately, this regime has sworn to annihilate us. So we felt that we didn't have any choice after waiting a very long time, seeing these threats emerging, to remove them because they were becoming imminent to our existence. Now, we managed to actually remove the immediate threats because the military nuclear program was, sort of disturbed to the extent that they are no longer capable to sneak out to a nuclear weapon. It will take them years to reconstitute what we've done. And with the ballistic missile program, we completely destroyed their industry. Okay? Now, what they're trying to do is to reverse that by, first of all, using extortion against the rest of the world. First of all, their neighbors, attacking their neighbors, by squeezing the energy markets, and using that as a leverage in order not to give up this course that they were on in terms of the military buildup and their political aspirations. So it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. But, a lot of people would say that, look, you've done everything, you've tried, all kind of actions, but here is a country which is still standing, which is still trying to dictate its terms. How does that make it a happy sort of a situation for you or, say, United States?
I think we have to rid ourselves from this fantasy that we can erase others, like they want to erase us. We are not in the business of trying to erase Iran. Okay? We've been trying diplomacy and political and economic pressure for many years to try to convince this fanatic regime to change course. At the end of the day, it didn't help because they were on a race to build these weapons of mass destruction with a very bad intention, as I said before. So now we're trying to convince them through military means. But we said at the outset that we don't have an intention to invade Iran, okay? We are not talking in terms of Iraq or Afghanistan here. We are talking about a situation in which you use measured military means for an aim. The question is whether you are going to succeed and to what extent you are going to succeed. We are happy, if you want to use this word, that we managed to remove the immediate threat on our existence. Now the question is whether we can build stability for the long term. And here we have a challenge because this regime, no doubt, has doubled down. Okay? The IRGC is calling the shots, and they have done, they have made several decisions that I think are very bad for the Iranian people. Okay. And are very bad for the Iranian interests because at the end of the day, I don't think that they have gathered a lot of admirers in the region or outside the region that appreciate what they have done, okay, right? Because they have basically attacked their neighbors for no reason whatsoever. I think that the Iranian regime is at a very weak point, okay, despite the rhetoric, that they are victorious. As much as you hear more rhetoric about victory, it means that they are in a much worse position.
It's interesting, though, that here is a country, Iran, continuously saying, or even now they're saying that all talks with United States are frozen. And we have President Trump saying that no, diplomacy is still alive. What does it talk about the conversations being held? Do you think these talks are viable?
Look, I think that we are dealing here with two world champions of negotiation. The Iranian regime on one hand that, has a very famous tradition of stalling for time and getting benefits in negotiations beyond what they deserve, okay, in terms of getting from the rest of the world. And on the other hand, you have President Trump, who wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. He's been negotiating all his life. So here you have very sophisticated negotiators that are trying to outsmart one another. So I wouldn't, take one statement and draw very far-fetching conclusions. Okay. I think we have to look at this, at the long term, be patient, because if you are consistent and you are patient, at the end of the day, the chips will, the cards will fall in place, the cards will play. Now, we, of course, don't enjoy this. We are on a third year of a war, the longest war in our history.
Correct.
Following the terrible massacre of the 7th of October, the decision of Hezbollah on the second day, on the 8th of October, to attack us, then their decision to attack us again on the 3rd of March, following our campaign against Iran. So now we are conducting an operation in Lebanon to basically neutralize these military threats. We've been, building a buffer zone.
Correct. I wanted to come to that.
Yeah.
The buffer zone that the Israel has announced that it is building, basically by entering into Lebanese territory along the border, you met with a lot of criticism as well from a lot of countries, including some of the European countries. Is it a concern for Israel that how the world sees these actions?
Following the 7th of October, in this terrible invasion we suffered, we had no choice but to go back to a policy of buffers. Because any sane country cannot agree to be threatened by an invasion force. And when it comes to Lebanon, actually the invasion force that Hezbollah was preparing for us was even much more powerful than the invasion force that invaded Israel on the 7th of October 23. And when we actually entered into Lebanon, we uncovered a massive tunnel infrastructure with the most modern weapons you can imagine. So what we are doing now is we are neutralizing one threat at a time. First aim was to neutralize the anti-tank missile that were being fired, the missiles that were being fired at our communities. They were using that, and that gives you zero time to go to cover. So it was very dangerous. We had to take a buffer of about 8 to 10 kilometers for that. Then we also neutralized the invasion scenario, because we uprooted the infrastructure and basically had all the terrorists escape north. Okay? Now we have two additional threats. One is, of course, the rocket fire. And here we have a challenge because our defense systems are very efficient, but not efficient to the extent that can neutralize every rocket. And also the population has to run to shelters all the time. This is not acceptable. So we've been working to diminish the stockpile of Hezbollah. It went down from about 150,000 rockets to an estimate of about 20,000 now. Okay. And the fourth one, was pretty recent, is the UAV.
The drones.
The drones. Now, the drones, we've been mostly capable of dealing with drones. However, they introduced a new type of drone that is being used in Ukraine that has a fiber and it cannot be disturbed, cannot be disturbed electronically. Okay. And they've been using that to attack our communities and our soldiers. So we are dealing with that.
So
now,
that
the question is, what are the things that you can neutralize physically, and in which cases you have to use deterrence to convince the other side not to attack you. Okay. So there has been a debate
on that
in Israel regarding whether we have to attack in Beirut, because that's the major stronghold of Hezbollah. Okay. And we had to strike the balance because we are also holding negotiations with the Lebanese government that opposes Hezbollah on a peace deal.
Yes. So on this buffer zone again, what is the bigger plan here? Is this permanent, or is Israel going to withdraw, or when?
Look, we hated the fact that we had to enter Lebanon again, because we don't have territorial aspirations. We don't have a claim for Lebanese territory. The only thing we want is that the government of Lebanon would exercise their sovereignty in the south and in the entire country. And that terrorist groups like Hezbollah wouldn't be allowed to hold force and weapons outside the jurisdiction of the government, which is, a reasonable expectation. Unfortunately, Hezbollah answers to Tehran and not to Beirut. And this is the challenge.
So in this case, we also saw Iran has been adamant on including Lebanon in any peace deal, any agreement. What if there's a scenario that you're not allowed to attack any group in Lebanon? Would that be acceptable to Israel?
We are going to exercise our right for self-defense, and we do not depend on the consent of Iran or any other country to do so. We are working in sync with the United States, because as you probably know, this is the first time that the United States and Israel went on a joint military operation. Sure. So we are partners, and we have to be in sync. Sometimes there are differences, but we are capable of working out these differences. And we are. So right now, I think there's an attempt to create a new equation that our communities will not be attacked in return for us not attacking the Dahia. But if that doesn't work, it will force us to attack the Dahia.
Okay. So in the same line, we also saw the media reports recently suggesting that the Prime Minister Netanyahu dialed down on the attack on Lebanon after a heated argument or heated phone call with President Trump. Is this part of the friendly, tactical disagreement, or should
absolutely.
We read more into it?
I think a lot of people are trying to read more into it. I think that this is one of the challenges that media has, but also it's an advantage that a lot of people with agenda are trying to use, to over-interpret things that are happening. It's like this is the end of the world. No, we are working together. We might have differences, different leaders have different styles when it comes to talk. And some of the things are reported in an exaggerated way in order to create an effect. Okay, so you have to be very cautious, not just as a journalist, but also as a viewer and as a listener, to judge where things are standing. I think that a lot of people will be happy to be able to identify a wedge between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they've been waiting for that for the last 10 years. I think they will have to wait a bit more.
There were a lot of people also on the same thought, suggesting that there could be a possibility that, which I formed a thought in my mind as well. Is there a possibility that there could be a complete disagreement between the United States and Israel over a deal?
Look, first of all, we've been there, as you know. I served as DCM in Washington when we had a very significant disagreement with the Obama administration regarding the JCPOA, because we were completely convinced, by the way, not only us, but most of our Arab neighbors, that this agreement actually paves the way for a military nuclear Iran, and also paves the way for Iranian hegemony in our region. Okay, because it would have rid the regime from sanctions, give them the funds, the access to the resources they need in order to build these armies of proxies that were powerful anyway, and eventually, after the sunsets of the agreement, it would give them the capability to sneak out to a military nuclear arsenal in a matter of weeks without us being even capable of identifying it or acting upon it. So I think that the fact that Iran has been debilitized significantly as a result of the sanctions, and that despite the fact that nuclear energy or a nuclear bomb is not high tech, this is a technology that was introduced almost a century ago. So the fact that the Iranian regime, despite their pretty developed technological capabilities, haven't been able to build a nuclear weapon, it's mainly because of Israel. So we've been preventing them, obstructing them. But at the end of the day, there is a time comes that their obstruction is not enough, and you have to take action. And this is, fortunately, what we did together with the United States, because the United States, at least this administration, has a similar strategic view about the dangers of a military nuclear Iran. And therefore, although we might have differences when it comes to the tactics, I think that we see eye to eye when it comes to what we want to do.
Okay. You mentioned this very interesting part about how Israel has been the reason why Iran could not get a nuclear weapon till now. There were so many stories about the Israeli spies, Israeli agents. Tell us something more about it. It'll be very interesting to know how it happened.
Well, look, naturally, we cannot elaborate many things I don't know myself. I think that history will tell us in the future what are the things that Israel has done. It has done numerous things. We have been investing a lot of effort, first of all, in knowing what's going on there, but also in taking action. I think that at the end of the day, when you know that somebody has the intention to exterminate you and is developing the means to do it, it doesn't leave you much of a choice.
Correct.
Especially since we are a very small country, and we've even heard from previous presidents of Iran that they even called us a one-bomb country. So we had to take the measures that are necessary to defend ourselves, and we did.
Okay, so coming back to the negotiations that are happening these days, we see Pakistan being as one of the visible mediators. Do you think a country like Pakistan has the credibility to be in a position of such importance?
No, I don't think so. I said multiple times, I don't think that they're reliable. I think that it's up to the United States to decide. At the end of the day, we have to recognize as Israelis that sometimes the United States has managed to work with very problematic players in order to achieve a result. We remember it from the Gaza deal, in which they took action by putting pressure on Hamas through Qatar and Turkey. Qatar and Turkey are sponsors of Hamas. We think that's wrong. It's illegitimate. But the United States has been able to exercise pressure through them. The challenge is that when you have mediators like that are leaning towards a terrorist entity or are legitimizing terrorism or radicalism, then it's very tricky because the United States has to exercise special caution not to fall into traps that can be put not only by the opposing side but also by the mediator.
There are also allegations of abuse against the Israeli army. I mean, we saw one of the incidents in which Israeli authorities decided to drop charges against the Israeli soldiers who were accused of abuse against Palestinian detainees. Do you think that is a cause of worry, how the world sees these things?
Look, there's been an amazing effort, and most of the time pretty successful, to distort facts and to sort of reinvent criteria in order to get Israel to be the accused instead of blaming the terrorists. Okay? So how this is being done? First of all, they are taking whatever the Israeli government does to hold soldiers accountable, and they only report about the cases in which they believe that the government was too dismissive. Okay? Then they use the UN system, because there's a majority of Arab and Muslim countries in the UN, so they appoint all these rapporteurs that are completely biased. And they produce these reports that are anti-Israeli, and then they are quoted as UN reports. Okay? Like for what happened last week, there was this rapporteur that took some completely unreliable reports of sexual abuse by the Israeli authorities. They weren't able to corroborate them, but they put them in a report. And they mentioned that Israel is a country that is in the list of sexual abusers. The number of sexual abuses within the UN system, now, and they did it on the account of 14 cases that they weren't be able to corroborate. The UN system itself, the UN forces, there were 782 complaints about sexual harassment there. Okay? So they didn't they didn't decide that UN is going to be included in the list as well. This is completely distorted. So then they take all these reports, it's a machinery of reports, and they create this sentiment in the media.
So are you saying that there are no abuses done by the soldiers?
First of all, any country and any army will do abuses. Once you have force in your hand, abuses will happen. The question is whether it's the exception or the rule, okay? And whether the country is doing something in that regard. So yes, our legal system is working. But there is a lot of hypocrisy here, Shuja, because they are holding Israel to a standard that is impossible, but then they are normalizing, they are inviting this head-chopping leader, what's his name, from Syria, Bashar. They are inviting him to the palaces, of the presidents in the West. This guy has a picture holding 2 chopped heads, okay? But there is no report about that. Suddenly there is an interest, so they invite him, as he was a diplomat, you see? So there is a situation here that because Israel is the one and only Jewish state, some elements are ganging up to label us, to misrepresent reality. And, unfortunately, a lot of people get convinced. You can go so far in trying to convince, that, these people are wrong, etc. But at the end of the day, it's overwhelming when you have television stations like Al Jazeera, Arabic. That is the outlet of the Muslim Brotherhood, basically, that are disseminating all this propaganda. You have TRT in Turkey, and you have the UN system with all these rapporteurs. At the end of the day, they are capable of creating an image that is very easy to adopt.
So the world including India, has suffered over the last few months a lot. I mean, there's price rise, you saw energy security is a concern. A lot of people would say, hey, this is started by you. You were the part of this conflict. You began it. How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, we weren't attacked. We didn't attack on the 7th of October, okay, and we weren't the ones to attack Iran first. The Iranians have attacked us with a barrage of ballistic missiles, and we are going to take preemptive action when our existence is on the line. And this is something that is very natural, and that is, that concurs with international law. And what we did is not only a favor to ourselves, but by systematically dealing with these rogue regimes that are, developing weapons of mass destruction. By the way, if you remember, the Iranians are not the first. All these countries like Syria, Iraq, they were a signatory of the NPT, and then they were cheating the system, deceiving the system, getting cooperation from the IAEA, and trying to sneak to a nuclear weapon. Imagine what would happen if Israel wasn't there. You already would have a bunch of radical countries with nuclear weapons, and our world would be much less safer. And Iran actually was on a very, very confident course of controlling the region, because we at least have air defense systems. There are many countries in the region that do not. And at the end of the day, many of them were already walking the walk to Tehran to bow to the Ayatollahs. The prospects of the Gulf would be very, very dark prospects if these guys would have won the day. And the future of 10 million Indians in the Gulf would be very, very dark. So the fact that we're taking now these measures and putting Iran in a box, yes, they are still standing, but we're putting them in a box, is that these countries will have a chance to prosper again. They won't be after the, under this cloud of radicalism and extremism and extortion. We are tasting now a little taste from the Iranians of what would have happened if they would be allowed to amass the power that they were planning.
Okay. Ambassador, Israel has a policy of mandatory military trainings, and I'm sure you also have gone through it, right?
Yes.
But there are concerns among people, some of the people in Israelis, that it should not be mandatory. Do you think that's something that should be an issue for a country like Israel? Should it be mandatory training for military?
Look, I think that every country has to decide for themselves according to the level of threat that they have. Unfortunately, in our case, we still suffer from a pretty high level of threat. We are not recruiting at the same rate that we were recruiting 40 or 50 years ago, because then really everybody were recruited. Now, sometimes there are considerations why not to recruit a person, so they are exempted. It's a pretty high percentage of the population. But we are still recruiting whoever is fit, because this is the need of the hour.
Would you suggest the same for a country like India, given the situation?
Well, I think you were blessed not only with a lot of territory, but also with a lot of population. And I'm sure that your government is going to recruit the number that it sees fit in order to defend your country. There is a positive aspect of conscription, and that is that you get the sense of, what are the challenges on your society at a very young age, and you receive responsibility at a very young age, and it matures you. It makes you usually a more productive person, a more responsible person, faster. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that one size fits all. Each country has to find its own way, and I know, because I see the success of this country, that your government is probably making the right decisions for itself.
Lastly, from October 7 till Iran, and now we have Lebanon also, do you think Israel is in a better place today?
Absolutely. We were at the brink of destruction, and we grew up much stronger, First of all, militarily, because we managed to neutralize the threats. Hamas is in a box in Gaza. We have a buffer zone. Hezbollah, that had the capability to basically destroy entire cities in Israel, is much weaker now. The regime in Iran is much weaker. And our economy is doing great. The last time when we were surprised 50 years ago in the Yom Kippur War, the October War of 1973, our economy was very weak. It took us many years to recover. Here, despite the fact that the estimated cost of the war has been something like $200 billion, our economy has been doing very well because we get a lot of foreign investment in our high-tech sector. We have record exports when it comes to defense systems. We have very good exports of services, and we have a very good energy market, offshore gas, and this is making Israel pretty rich, pretty stable. We I think grew in 2025 about 4%, and our GDP per capita went up to 70,000. So although there is fatigue and people were traumatized, we had 1,800 dead, civilians and soldiers, and we are really praying for this war to be over. The resilience of Israelis has been remarkable, because Israelis understand that this is an existential war. It's not something that we did out of choice or anything like that. We know when our back is against the wall that we have to act.
Thank you very much for all the time that you've given. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.